On December 26, 1896, the military court tried Jose Rizal and later found him guilty of rebellion, sedition, and conspiracy. The Spanish authorities believed that Rizal's writings fatally unnecessary and cited the rebellion which, by 1896, had already become a revolution. On December 29 at 6 a.m., Captain Rafael Dominguez read before Rizal his death sentence. His execution was scheduled the following day. At around 7 a.m. of December 29, Jose Rizal entered death row accompanied by his counsel Senior Taviel de Andrade and the Jesuit priest Villa Clara.
Huli ka, Rizal, mag-agahan kami.
Salamat, Senyor.
Sabihin mo na lang kung ano pang iyong kailangan.
Sa ngayon, ang kailangan ko lang ay isang aklat ng Biblia.
Sige, maghintay ka ng ilang saglit at sasabihin ko kay Father Mark na kadahan ka ng aklat ng Biblia. Sabi kay Father Mark na nagkakas si Rizal ng aklat ng Biblia. Masusunod ko sabi kay Father Mark na kadahan si Rizal ng aklat ng Biblia. Opo, masusunod po siya. Ako na ako sa iyo.
Magandang umaga, Father. Magandang umaga rin. Father, kailangan niyo rin siya ng isang aklat ng Biblia. Sige, makakarating. Ito na yung aklat na kailangan mo.
Salamat, Father Mark. Maaari bang iwan niyo muna ako mag-isa?
In his last hours, Rizal read the Bible and Thomas à Kempis' Imitation of Christ, which he later dedicated to Josephine Bracken. He also wrote the poem Mi Ultimo Adios, which he concealed in an alcohol burner. The controversy over Rizal's retraction has not been settled. The original document of Rizal's retraction was found in the Archdiocesan Archives in 1935. 39 years after having disappeared the day Rizal was shot, there was no record of anybody seeing this original document in 1896, except the publishers of La Voz Española, which published its contents on the day of Rizal's execution. Most experts think that the handwriting on the document is authentic. However, scholars are baffled as to why Rizal, who courageously faced persecution for most of his life and who was finally sentenced to death for his beliefs, who suddenly balked at the last vital moment.
Maaari ba yung ipakirito kay Father Mark?
Magandang umaga, Father Mark. May pinapaabot po si Rizal sa inyo.
Oh, sige, maraming salamat.
Sige po, mauna na ako, Father.
At 5 this morning of the 30th, the lover of Rizal arrived at the prison. The news tells of Rizal and the woman who had been his lover were performed at the point of his death. According to the testimony of the agent of the Cuerpo de Vigilancia, Josephine and Rizal were married. At 7 a.m. on December 30, 1896 at Luneta, Manila, the 35-year-old patriot was shot in the back by a firing squad. He hesitated, turned halfway around to face his executioners, and fell on his back to face the Philippine sun.
Inside this chilly walls, there's nothing I can hear but the sound of our gunshots. On 18 September 1986, 7 months since Cory became president, she went to the United States and spoke before the joint session of the U.S. Congress. Cory was welcomed with long applause as she took the podium and addressed the United States about her presidency and the challenges faced by the new republic. She began her speech with the story of her leaving the United States 3 years prior as a newly widowed wife of Ninoy Aquino. She then told of Ninoy's character, conviction, and resolve in opposing the authoritarianism of Marcos. She talked of the 3 times that they lost Ninoy, including his demise on 23 August 1983. The first time was when the dictatorship detained Ninoy with other dissenters.
So, the government sought to break him by indignities and terror. They looked him up in a tiny nearly airless cell in a military camp in the North. They stripped him naked and held a threat of a sudden midnight execution over his death. Ninoy held up manfully under all of it. I barely this as well. For 43 days, the authorities would not tell me what had happened to him. This was the first time my children and I felt we had lost him.
Cory continued that when Nino survived that first detention, he was then charged of subversion, murder, and other crimes. He was tried by a military court whose legitimacy Ninoy adamantly questioned. To solidify his protest, Ninoy decided to go on hunger strike and fast for 40 days. Cory treated this event as the second time that their family lost Ninoy. She said,
When that didn't work, they put him on trial for starvation, murder, and host of other crimes before a military commission. Ninoy challenged his authority and went on fast. If he survived it, then he felt God intended him for another fate. We had lost him again, for nothing would hold him back from his determination to see fast through the end. He stopped only when it dawned on him that the government would keep his body alive after the fast had destroyed his brain, and so with barely any life in his body, he called off the fast on the 40th day.
Ninoy's death was the third and the last time that Cory and their children lost Ninoy.
And then we lost him irrevocably and more painfully than in past. The news came to us is Boston. It had to be after the 3 happiest years of our lives together. But his death was my country's resurrection and the courage and faith by which alone they could be free again. The dictator had called him a nobody yet. 2 million people threw aside their passivity and fear and assorted him to this grave.
Cory attributed the peaceful EDSA revolution to the martyrdom of Ninoy. She stated that the death of Ninoy sparked the revolution and the responsibility of offering the democratic alternative had fallen on her shoulders. Cory's address, she introduced us to her democratic philosophy, which she claims she also acquired from Ninoy.
I held fast to Ninoy's conviction that it must be by the ways of democracy. I held out of participation in the 1984 election, the dictatorship called, even if I knew it. But with rage, I was warned by the lawyers of the opposition that I ran the grave risk of legitimizing the foregone results of elections that were clearly going to fraudulent. But I was not fighting for lawyers, but for the people in whose intelligence I had implicit faith by the exercise of the democracy when it came. And then also it was the only way I knew by which we could measure our power, even in the terms dictated by which we could measure our power even in terms dictated by the dictatorship.
Cory talked about her miraculous victory through the people's struggle and continued talking about her earliest initiatives as the president of a restored democracy. She stated that she intended to forge and draw reconciliation after a bloody and polarizing dictatorship. Cory emphasized the importance of the EDSA revolution in terms of being a limited revolution that respects the life and freedom of every Filipino. She also boasted of the restoration of a fully constitutional government whose constitution gave utmost respect to the Bill of Rights. Cory then proceeded on her peace agenda with the existing communist insurgency, aggravated by the dictatorial and authoritarian measure of Ferdinand Marcos. Cory then turned to the controversial topic of the Philippine foreign debt, amounting to $26 billion at the time of her speech. This debt had ballooned during the Marcos regime. Cory expressed her intention to honor those debts despite mentioning that the people did not benefit from such debts. Thus, she mentioned her protestation about the way the Philippines was deprived of choices to pay those debts within the capacity of the Filipino people. Cory related to the U.S. legislators that whenever she went, she met poor and unemployed Filipinos willing to offer their lives for democracy. Cory ended her speech by thanking America for serving as home to her family for what she referred to as the 3 happiest years of our lives together. She enjoyed America in building the Philippines as a new home for democracy and in turning the country as a shining statement of our two nations' commitment to freedom.